For the longest time, I believed I had the perfect marriage. 7 years together, a beautiful home, and a life that looked straight out of a romance novel. Emily and I had been inseparable since college. We laughed at the same jokes, finished each other's sentences, and promised that no matter what, we'd always have each other's backs. I worked hard to build the life we dreamed of. Long hours, late nights, and endless sacrifices. All worth it, or so I thought. I had just landed a huge promotion at work, something I had been chasing for years. My boss, Richard, the kind of guy who could make or break careers, pulled me aside one evening after a company event and told me, "Mark, you're one of the sharpest guys I've seen. You've got a future here." Hearing those words felt like validation. Like everything I had been working for was finally paying off. I was proud, not just for myself, but for us, for Emily. She had supported me through every late night, every stressful deadline, every moment of self-doubt. I couldn't wait to get home and tell her the news. But that night, when I walked through the front door, expecting her to be excited, something felt off. She was sitting on the couch, her phone in her hand, but the moment she saw me, she quickly flipped it over. A strange, almost guilty smile crossed her lips. "Hey, babe, how was work?" she asked casually, her voice a little too sweet, a little too rehearsed. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe I was just overanalyzing. Maybe she had just been scrolling through social media or texting a friend. But as the days passed, I started noticing the little things. The late-night phone calls she would take in the other room, whispering in hushed tones. The way she would suddenly put her phone on silent whenever I walked in. The night she claimed she was too tired, too stressed, too busy for even the smallest moments of affection. At first, I brushed it off. I was exhausted from work, and maybe she was just going through something. Every couple had rough patches, right? But then the excuses started piling up. "Sorry, babe. I'm having dinner with the girls tonight. Don't wait up. Ugh. Work is killing me. I need a weekend away. Just me and the girls." "You're being paranoid, Mark. Just drop it." Something wasn't right. I could feel it in my gut. That deep, unsettling sense that something in my perfect marriage was slipping through my fingers. And the worst part? I had no idea just how deep the betrayal ran. It started small, almost too small to notice. At first, it was just Emily being on her phone a little more than usual. She was always a social person, always texting friends or scrolling through social media, so I didn't think much of it. But then it started happening at odd times, late at night, long after we had gone to bed. I'd wake up to the dim glow of her phone screen illuminating her face in the dark. She'd be lying on her side, turned away from me, her fingers moving quickly, typing out messages. And every time I stirred or shifted in bed, she would immediately lock the screen and tuck her phone under the pillow. "Who are you texting this late?" I asked one night, my voice groggy from sleep. "Just Sarah," she answered too quickly, her tone light, almost dismissive. "She's going through some things with her boyfriend." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something about the way she said it, the way she refused to look at me, sent a strange, uneasy feeling crawling up my spine. Then she started becoming distant. The warmth that once defined our relationship began to fade. She avoided my touch, pulling away when I reached for her hand. The playful, teasing conversations we used to have turned into nothing but short, clipped exchanges. Even the way she laughed, it sounded different. Hollow, forced, like she was going through the motions, pretending to be the same Emily I had always known. "Is everything okay?" I asked one evening as we sat at the dinner table. She barely looked up from her plate. "Yeah, just work stress," she muttered, stabbing at her food like she wasn't even hungry. But I knew it wasn't work stress. Then the strangest things started happening. Every time my boss, Richard, called me, Emily would suddenly get up and leave the room. It was like clockwork. The phone would ring, his name flashing across the screen, and she would grab her phone and walk out, pretending to check something in the other room. The first time it happened, I didn't think much of it. The second time, I started paying attention. The third time, I knew something was wrong. One night, I decided to test it. I casually mentioned over dinner that Richard had been giving me more responsibilities at work, that he had been calling me more often, discussing projects and plans for the company. Emily barely reacted. But then my phone rang. Richard. As soon as his name popped up on the screen, Emily's entire demeanor changed. She shifted in her seat, her hand instinctively reaching for her phone. A second later, she stood up. "I need to make a quick call," she mumbled, already walking toward the hallway. I watched her go, my pulse quickening. Why? Why was she suddenly so uncomfortable whenever Richard was mentioned? Why did she need to leave the room every time he called? The feeling in my gut grew stronger, twisting into something dark. I didn't have proof. Not yet. But I knew one thing for sure. Emily was hiding something, and I was going to find out what. I remember the exact moment Richard announced the trip. It was during a regular Monday morning meeting at the office. Nothing unusual, just the usual corporate updates and task assignments. But then, out of nowhere, Richard leaned back in his chair, laced his fingers together, and casually dropped the news. "Looks like I'll be heading to Chicago for a few days next weekend. Some important clients to meet, big contracts on the line. Mark, we might need to have a few calls while I'm there." I nodded, not thinking much of it at first. Business trips were common. Richard was always traveling, always making deals. But then, that night, Emily mentioned something that sent a strange chill through me. "Oh, by the way, babe, this weekend I'm heading out for a girls' trip," she said as she scrolled through her phone, barely looking up. I frowned. "A girls' trip? Where to?" "Just a little getaway. Sarah and the girls planned it last minute. You know, some wine, a spa day, just a break from everything." I tried to smile, tried to act normal, but something about the timing gnawed at me. Richard's business trip, Emily's weekend getaway. Same dates. A coincidence, right? It had to be. But the uneasy feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. The week dragged on, and Emily seemed different. She was more careful with her phone than ever, taking it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. She started wearing perfume again, one I hadn't smelled on her in years. And she was oddly excited about this trip, almost nervous. Then came the receipt. It happened purely by accident. I was looking for my keys one evening when I noticed her handbag lying open on the counter. Her wallet was half spilled out, a few loose papers sticking out. And that's when I saw it. A receipt. A hotel receipt. At first, I didn't process it, but when I picked it up, my blood ran cold. Luxury Suites Hotel, Chicago. The date? This weekend. The name on the reservation? Richard Turner. My boss. I stood there, gripping the thin slip of paper, feeling like the ground had just cracked open beneath me. Emily had said she was going on a girls' trip. So why did she have a receipt for a high-end hotel under Richard's name? My mind raced. Was it possible she had booked it for a friend? Maybe she was just helping out? Maybe. No. I knew better. Everything suddenly clicked into place. The late-night texts. The distant behavior. The way she always left the room whenever Richard's name was mentioned. I felt sick. My entire body tensed as I tried to process what this meant. Was it really happening? Was my wife sleeping with my boss? I needed proof. And I needed it fast. I couldn't ignore it anymore. That receipt was all the proof I needed to confirm what my gut had been screaming at me for weeks. Something was going on. But if I was going to confront Emily, I needed undeniable evidence. Cold, hard proof. Something she couldn't twist or talk her way out of. So, I started digging. That night, while Emily was in the shower, I took my phone and dialed Sarah, her best friend. If this girl's trip was real, Sarah would know. "Hey Sarah, it's Mark," I said casually, forcing my voice to stay even. "Emily's been so excited about your trip this weekend. Where are you guys staying again?" Silence. A long pause. "A trip? Sarah's voice was hesitant, confused. What trip? My chest tightened. My fingers clenched around the phone. The girls' trip. The one Emily said you all planned? Spot A, wine tasting, the whole thing. I pressed. Sarah hesitated again, then let out an awkward laugh. Mark, I have no idea what you're talking about. I haven't seen Emily in weeks. The floor felt like it had dropped out from under me. I barely remember mumbling some excuse before hanging up. My hands were shaking. My mind was spinning. She had lied. Not just a small lie, a huge one. She had created an entire fake story, complete with fake plans, just to cover up whatever the hell she was actually doing. At that moment, my heart stopped battling between doubt and denial. Emily was cheating. The only question was with who, but I already had a pretty good idea. And now I was going to catch her. That night, while she slept, I took the GPS tracker I had ordered weeks ago, back when my suspicions first started, and slipped out into the garage. Her car sat there, looking so ordinary, so innocent, as if it weren't the key to some dark secret. I crouched down and secured the small device under the back bumper, hidden where she would never find it. Then I waited. Friday night came, and Emily was all dressed up. Tighter dressed than usual. More makeup than I'd seen on her in months. You look nice, I said, watching her slip on her heels. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Thanks, babe. I'll text you when I get there. And then she was gone. I pulled out my phone and opened the tracking app. My pulse pounded as the little Emily's car moved through the city streets. At first, she drove toward her best friend's neighborhood. For a second, my heart almost wavered. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I had overreacted. But then she kept driving, past Sarah's Street, past the suburbs, into downtown, right to the entrance of a 5-star hotel. The same hotel on Richard's receipt. I stared at my phone screen, my hands shaking. This was it. This was the proof I needed. She wasn't with her friends. She wasn't on a girls' trip. She was at a hotel, and I had no doubt in my mind who was waiting for her inside. My stomach churned. The betrayal hit like a freight train, slamming into my chest with brutal force. But I didn't let myself break. Not yet. No, I wasn't done. I was going to catch her in the act. I barely remember the drive. The city lights blurred past me, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My mind raced through every possibility, every excuse she could come up with, every way she might try to gaslight me into believing this wasn't what it so clearly was. But I knew better now. The GPS tracker didn't lie. The receipt in her bag didn't lie. And in just a few minutes, I would see it with my own eyes. As I pulled up to the hotel, a towering, gleaming skyscraper of wealth and luxury, I felt my stomach twist into knots. The valet was busy handling expensive cars, men in sharp suits and women in designer dresses stepping out with confidence. It was the kind of place meant for the elite, for those with more money than morals. I parked across the street, my pulse hammering as I watched the entrance. Then I saw her. Emily. She stepped through the revolving doors, and my breath caught in my throat. She was wearing a tight red dress, the one she hadn't worn in years, the one she used to wear on our anniversaries, back when she still looked at me like I was the only man in the world. My stomach churned, my heart pounded. This wasn't a casual night out. She had dressed for someone, for him. And then, as if the universe wanted to shove the final dagger into my chest, he walked in right behind her. Richard, my boss, the man who had just promoted me, the man who sat across from me in meetings, shaking my hand, praising my hard work, the man who was supposed to be my mentor. Now he was smiling at my wife, and then I saw it, his hand, sliding to the small of her back, pulling her close as he whispered something in her ear. She laughed. That fake, seductive, breathy laugh. The kind of laugh she used to give me. And then, without hesitation, without guilt, they stepped into the elevator together. I felt like the air had been knocked from my lungs. I wanted to storm in, grab him by the collar, and beat the smug smile off his face. I wanted to grab Emily and demand to know why. I wanted to scream, to break something, to do anything but sit there in silence as my whole world collapsed in front of me. But I didn't, because I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of catching me off guard. No, I needed proof. Undeniable proof. I pulled out my phone and snapped pictures. Emily. The dress. Richard's hand on her back. The way they leaned into each other as the elevator doors closed. My heart was breaking, but my mind was sharp. I wasn't going to lose control. Not yet. I was going to destroy them both. And this was just the beginning. I wasn't thinking straight, but I was thinking clearly. The rage inside me burned white hot, but I refused to act on it. Not yet. I wasn't going to let emotions cloud my judgment. No, if I was going to confront them, I needed something they couldn't deny. I needed proof. Sitting in my car, staring at the hotel entrance, I took a deep breath and made a decision. I wasn't leaving without it. I walked through the hotel's revolving doors, forcing myself to stay calm. I was stepping into enemy territory now. Their world. A place where deception hid behind crystal chandeliers and luxury suites. My heart pounded, but I kept my composure as I approached the front desk. Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Grand Royale. How can I assist you? I gave a polite smile. My mind had already formed a plan. Yes, I have a reservation. Mark Reynolds. Of course I didn't, but I had prepared for this. Before leaving the car, I had booked the cheapest available room online using a burner email and a prepaid credit card. Just enough to get me inside. The receptionist checked the system, nodded, and handed me a key card. You're in room 214, Mr. Reynolds. Enjoy your stay. I took the card with steady hands, but my pulse was anything but calm. Now came the tricky part, getting the room number. I needed to know where they were. I couldn't risk wandering around, hoping to stumble upon them. So I did something risky. I spotted a young bellhop, barely out of his 20s, a little tired, a little disinterested. Perfect. I slid a crisp $100 bill across the counter and leaned in slightly. Listen, I just need a little help. My friend is staying here with someone, and I want to surprise them. Richard Turner. Can you tell me which room he's in? The bellhop glanced at the money, then at me. I could see the wheels turning in his head. Sir, I'm not really supposed to. I pushed another $100 across the counter. He sighed, pocketed the cash, and typed into the computer. Suite 1503. Top floor. Bingo. I turned and walked toward the elevator, my hands clenched into fists. Game on. Setting up the trap. By the time I reached the 15th floor, my heart was slamming against my ribs. I had brought a hidden camera, a small wireless device I had purchased weeks ago when my suspicions first began. It was meant for home security, but tonight it had a different purpose. I pulled it from my pocket and carefully positioned it above the suite's door, making sure it had a clear view. Then I waited. Every second felt like an eternity. The hallway was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that only expensive hotels could buy. A thick, suffocating stillness. And then I heard them. Muffled voices. Footsteps. I stepped into the shadows just as the elevator doors dinged open. There they were, Emily and Richard. She was laughing, her hand resting on his chest, her body pressed close to his. He leaned in, whispered something in her ear. She giggled, then placed a hand on his face, pulling him in for a slow, intimate kiss. My stomach turned. My fists clenched. But I didn't move. I just watched. Watched as my wife, the woman I had given 7 years of my life to, walked into a hotel suite with my boss, completely unaware that they were about to be caught. I checked the camera feed on my phone. Perfect. Everything was being recorded. I had them. And soon, they'd know exactly how much of a mistake they had made. I barely slept that night. Not because I was heartbroken. No, I had burned through heartbreak long ago. Now, all that remained was a cold, calculated sense of purpose. I lay in my hotel bed, staring at my phone screen, watching the footage over and over again. Every kiss, every touch, every lie. The proof was undeniable. Emily and Richard had spent the night together in that suite, completely oblivious to the fact that they were being recorded, oblivious to the fact that I was planning their downfall. By morning, I was ready, and I wasn't going to confront them in some emotional outburst. No, that was too easy. I was going to ruin them. Step 1, the email. Before heading to the office, I sat in my car and typed out an email. To anonymous recipient. Subject: You deserve to know the truth. I kept it simple, just a polite message to Richard's wife, informing her of his little extracurricular activities. Attached was the footage, unedited, crystal clear, time-stamped. And then, I hit send. A part of me wondered how she would react. Would she scream? Cry? Throw him out? I didn't care. I just sat back, watching the chaos unfold from a distance. Step 2. The storm hits the office. By the time I arrived at work, I could feel the tension in the air. Something was brewing. And then I heard her. Richard's wife. She stormed through the office lobby like a hurricane, her heels clicking against the marble floor, her voice shaking with fury. Where is he? Where is that cheating bastard? Heads turned. Employees whispered. People peeked over their cubicles. And then Richard appeared, his face pale as death. Jessica, let's talk about this in private. Slap. She hit him so hard that the entire office went silent. You think you can lie to me? You think I wouldn't find out? She threw her phone at him, the video playing on the screen. My video. Richard stammered, his hands shaking as he tried to grab her arm. But she yanked away, disgusted. Don't you ever come near me again, Richard. We're done. And just like that, she walked out, leaving him standing there, humiliated. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Step 3. The grand finale. I had scheduled an emergency meeting that morning. A company-wide briefing Richard was supposed to lead. But today, I was taking control. The conference room was full, executives, employees, interns. Everyone was there, including Richard. He sat at the head of the table, rubbing his temples, clearly shaken from the scene his wife had just caused. I stood up. Before we start today's agenda, I said calmly, tapping my laptop, there's something I think we all need to see. I clicked the screen, and there it was, playing on the massive office projector for everyone to see. Emily. Richard. The hotel room. The betrayal. Gasps filled the room. Someone cursed under their breath. A few people exchanged horrified glances. Richard's face turned a deep shade of red. Turn it OFF, he bellowed, leaping to his feet. I just smiled. Why? You seemed pretty comfortable last night. Shouldn't the team see how well you closed deals? The CEO, a stone-faced man in his 60s, slowly stood. Richard, he said coldly. My office. Now. Richard looked around, realizing that his career, his entire reputation, was crumbling in real time. He stormed out, but everyone already knew. He was finished. And as I shut my laptop, taking in the stunned silence of the room, I finally felt something I hadn't in weeks. Satisfaction. But I wasn't done yet, because there was still Emily, and she had no idea what was coming. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, waiting. I had prepared everything, dimmed the lights, poured myself a drink, placed my phone face down in front of me. The house was silent except for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. It was the calm before the storm. Then, finally, I heard it, the familiar sound of her car pulling into the driveway. The front door creaked open. Her heels clicked against the wooden floor as she stepped inside, dropping her purse on the counter like she always did. Hey, babe. Emily called out casually, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just spent the weekend in another man's bed. I didn't answer. I just sat there, swirling the drink in my glass, staring at the table. She hesitated, then walked closer, stopping in the doorway of the kitchen. "Mark, why are you sitting in the dark?" I finally looked up at her, studying her carefully. Her hair was slightly tousled, like she had tried to fix it in the car mirror. She had reapplied her lipstick, but not well. There was a faint smudge near the corner of her mouth. And her dress? Not the one she had left in. I exhaled slowly. "Had a nice trip?" I asked, my voice perfectly even. She blinked. For a split second, just a fraction of a second, I saw it fear. Then she plastered on that fake, rehearsed smile. "Yeah, it was fun," she said, walking to the fridge. "The girls and I had the best time. So much wine. You wouldn't believe." I slid my phone across the table. "Play." The screen lit up. The footage started rolling. Emily's voice died in her throat. The color drained from her face as she saw herself, wrapped in Richard's arms, giggling in the hotel lobby. His hand tracing lazy circles on her lower back as they entered the elevator together. Then the moment that shattered everything, the kiss. Slow, intimate, the kind of kiss that wasn't meant for a husband. I watched as Emily's breathing became shallow. Her hands trembled as she reached for the phone, as if she could somehow make it disappear. "Mark, How long?" I interrupted, my voice sharp, cold. She blinked, swallowing hard. What?" My fist slammed against the table. "How long, Emily?" She flinched, tears welling up in her eyes. But I wasn't buying it. Not this time. I pushed back my chair, standing slowly. "Tell me," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "How long have you been screwing my boss?" She shook her head frantically. "It's not what you think, I swear. It just happened. It was a mistake." I laughed. A hollow, bitter sound. "A mistake?" I repeated. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. You don't just accidentally book a 5-star hotel and sleep with another man." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Please, Mark, let's talk about this." I grabbed the divorce papers from the counter and threw them in front of her. Signed, sealed, ready to go. There's nothing left to talk about. Emily's eyes widened in horror. She looked down at the papers, then back at me. You already." "I knew," I said, cutting her off. "I knew before you even left." She started sobbing, reaching for me, but I stepped back. "Please, Mark, I love you," she cried, desperation in her voice. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I picked up my phone, opened my messages, and showed her the sent email. The one I had sent to Richard's wife. Emily gasped. No, what did you do?" she shrieked, grabbing for my phone, but I pulled it away. "I made sure everyone knows exactly who you are," I said. She broke down completely, falling to her knees, but I didn't feel pity. I just turned, grabbed my car keys, and walked toward the door. As I stepped outside, I heard her scream behind me. She wasn't crying because she had lost me. She was crying because she had lost everything. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Emily collapsed on the floor, sobbing. Her once carefully crafted mask of lies had shattered, and now she was nothing but a broken, desperate woman, clinging to whatever scraps of our life she thought she could salvage. "Mark, please," she wailed, reaching for me. "We can fix this. I swear. I just made a mistake." I stared at her, my chest rising and falling with slow, controlled breaths. "A mistake?" I repeated, my voice eerily calm. "Emily, a mistake is forgetting to lock the front door. A mistake is leaving the stove on, sleeping with my boss for God knows how long. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." She shook her head violently. "It didn't mean anything. I swear. You mean everything to me." I almost laughed. Everything? If I had meant everything to her, she wouldn't have betrayed me in the worst way possible. If I had meant everything, she wouldn't have lied to my face. "You're not sorry you did it," I said, stepping back as she tried to crawl toward me. "You're sorry you got caught." Her sobs grew louder, but I had no sympathy left to give. I turned, grabbed the divorce papers from the counter, and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" she cried. I glanced back at her, my grip tightening around the papers. "To end this," I said. Then, without another word, I walked out the door, leaving her behind. The divorce, no second chances. The next morning, I was the first one at the courthouse. I wanted no delays, no room for manipulation. I didn't need closure. I didn't need explanations. I needed her out of my life. By noon, the papers were filed. By the end of the week, Emily had moved out of our house, dragging her suitcase down the same driveway where we had once talked about our future together. But there was no future now. Not for us. She tried to call. She tried to text. She even sent emails, long, rambling apologies that all boiled down to the same thing. "I messed up. Please take me back." I didn't reply, because I was done. Richard's downfall, the empire crumbles. If I thought Emily's fall was satisfying, watching Richard lose everything was even sweeter. His wife had already left him, taking half of everything in the divorce. And trust me, she didn't go quietly. She exposed him, not just as a cheating husband, but as a lying, manipulative boss. His name was dragged through every social circle, every executive event. But the real death blow? The company fired him. After the footage leaked, the board had no choice. No company wants a scandal tied to one of its top executives. No brand wants a man known for screwing his employees' wives. The news spread fast. I still remember the moment Richard walked into the office, expecting to do damage control, only to find security waiting for him. "Richard Turner, your services are no longer required." They took his key card. His nameplate was already gone. His office had been cleared out overnight. The once powerful corporate shark was reduced to nothing. As he walked out in shame, I saw my co-workers whispering, some trying to hide their smirks. And then, they clapped. It started slow, one person, then another, until the entire floor erupted into applause. No one had liked him. No one respected him. And now, he had no power left to abuse. The real victory, walking away free. With Emily gone and Richard destroyed, I should have felt bitter. I should have felt empty. But I didn't. For the first time in years, I felt light. Free. Like I had been carrying this invisible weight on my shoulders for so long that I didn't even realize it was crushing me until it was gone. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't need to prove anything, because I had already won. That night, as I stood on my balcony, looking out over the city, I took a deep breath and smiled. My life wasn't over. It was just beginning. Months passed. Seasons changed. Life moved on, and so did I. At first, there were moments when the anger still flickered inside me. Late at night when the silence felt too loud, when the memories tried to creep in. But with every passing day, Emily became less of a wound and more of a lesson. I had rebuilt myself, gotten back in shape, spent more time with friends, focused on me. The divorce had gone through without a hitch. Emily had fought at first, pleading, crying, trying to manipulate her way back. But the moment she realized I wasn't breaking, she gave up. Last I heard, she was staying at some cheap apartment on the other side of town, trying to piece together the mess she had made of her life. Richard? He was even worse off. His career was over. No company wanted to hire a disgraced executive with a reputation for screwing over his own employees. Literally and figuratively. He had gone from high-powered corporate mogul to an unemployed, divorced wreck in less than 6 months. And me? I was thriving. Until one night. It was late. I had just come back from the gym, feeling good, stronger than I had in years. I set my keys down on the counter, grabbed a cold drink from the fridge, and casually glanced at my phone. One new message from unknown number. I frowned. Probably spam. But when I opened it, my blood ran cold. Emily, I made a mistake. Can we talk? I stared at the screen. For a long time, I just stared. She had finally broken. Finally realized what she had thrown away. Finally understood that I wasn't waiting for her. And now, she wanted back in. A few months ago, I might have hesitated. Might have wondered if she really regretted it. If she had changed. But now I just smirked. I hovered over the message for half a second before pressing block. No words. No response. Because some betrayals? They don't deserve second chances. And with that, I tossed my phone onto the couch, leaned back, and exhaled. For the first time in a long, long time, I was truly free.